want to go ahead and I want to get to my review for Transformers Rise of the Beasts. For those that don't know, the general plot, the general synopsis of this movie, the Autobots and the Maximals join forces to prevent the arrival of the planet-eating Unicron from destroying the Earth. And they have to battle numerous other threats, including Unicron's most trusted servant, Scourge. And before getting into this movie, I do want to kind of share my thoughts just on my overall thoughts just on the Transformers franchise in general. You know, I did not grow up with Transformers as a kid. Like, I may have seen clips online. I was aware of Transformers, but it was not something I watched. Like a lot of those 80s cartoons, I just didn't check out. Master of the Universe, G.I. Joe, TMNT, Transformers, you know. It wasn't really till like the 90s, obviously, when I was a 90s kid, grew up on Batman main series, Hey Arnold, etc. Like, I watched Beast Wars, you know, which I guess this movie is taking inspiration from. And so I knew about the Maximals, the Predacons, Terracons, all that stuff. I was like, oh, okay. It wasn't until like much later on where I finally like, you know, watched the first of the Michael Bay movies, the first Transformers film, 2007, right, I believe. And again, you know, listen, I thought the movie was entertaining. I was like, oh, that was fun. That was okay. I liked it fine enough, you know. And then when they were making the second one, I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, you know, the trailers look great. And you know, I saw that, and I was like, it was awful. The second one, it was one of the worst filming experiences I had. Just a completely terrible movie. And of course, the sequels were either as bad, if not worse, from that point forward. Until obviously, you know, Bumblebee, which was not directed by Michael Bay, thankfully, Travis Knight, who's probably best known before that for directing Kubo and the Two Strings, and he delivered a great film. You know, it's funny because, you know, I never really understood. Well, because the big, I think, criticism that a lot of Transformers had over the Michael Bay movies, other than the fact they're just terrible, is that, like, those films don't have any heart. I'm like, what are you talking about? Heart? Transformers? What do you mean? Like, you know, I was very dismissive. But it was not until I saw Bumblebee that I was like, oh, I finally understood what Transformers fans were saying, because it had heart, it had earnestness, but at the same time, it had some cool action and you know, kind of brought, you know, Cybertron to life and had all those characters. I was like, oh, now I'm seeing it. And then later on, quickly afterwards, I think, I saw the original 1986 animated movie. And I remember, like, really liking it. I was like, oh, there's a lot here. I mean, again, a little overwhelming for someone who just didn't grow up with the show. There's a lot of characters, a lot of concepts. It's like, okay. But, you know, recently rewatching Transformers, the movie, the 86 film, and also reviewing some of the more recent, you know, episodes, the cartoon, the pilot, matter of fact, I was like, oh, wow, I started to have more of appreciation, I think, for this franchise and just the ideas that, you know, it's like, I know that this is Hasbro and like, hey, we're just making this cartoon to sell toys, but hey, those original creators, they put a lot of work into this, and the, you know, the lore and the designs and, you know, all the different personalities. I think it's the other thing, just the personalities of the Transformers, like, really helps sell it and makes it so beloved. You know, just everyone from, you know, just the very charismatic and you know, regal and noble Optimus Prime to the scheming coward that is Starscream. It's like a lot of these characters all kind of stand out, you know. I think that's fun. I think that's what's led to its success for, I mean, this point, what, Chet, 40 years? We're coming up on 40 years now. So it's pretty impressive. And so, yeah, I have a new appreciation for it. And I apologize for my original dismissiveness, you know, years ago. I was like, whatever. But now I get it. I understand. And so, like, going into this movie, I have to admit, I was a little trepidatious again, just because, well, it wasn't Travis Knight coming back, and all the trailers just made it out to look like, this looks like the same Michael Bay movies that we saw. However many of those, how many movies did Michael Bay make? 4 or 5 Transformers movies? I was like, I don't know about this. And listen, I'll get right to it. I'm not going to, you know, draw this out. I'm going to get to it quick, chat. Everyone, again, is probably asking right now, is this film more like Bumblebee, or is it more like the Michael Bay films? And I'm very sorry to report that this film is more like the Michael Bay movies. Although it's not as weirdly and gratuitously obsessed with the female form and upskirt shots that Michael Bay is, it's still just chock full of constant, never-ending pop culture references, lame jokes, and just kind of, and again, I don't know what it is with these films. This kind of just ill-fitting hip-hop and rap songs and like certain dramatic climactic, bombastic moments that, for me, at the very least, it takes me out of the scenes. I wouldn't say it's as bad as like Revenge of the Fallen on, but and it's not as obviously racist as those movies are, and sexist as those movies are. Certainly not sexist. But it's like it indulges in stereotypes. It still has certain characters that are like, hey, this is the Hispanic Autobots. See how Hispanic they are. I'm like, what are you doing? And they like even have like a moment to like kind of talk about that. I'm like, this feels really weird, and it just doesn't work. It's like, can we stop? Can we stop? They even have, I'm like, what is this fascination with bodily fluids? Because I don't think Bumblebee had like a bodily fluids joke, but there's like another joke about like the Transformers pissing themselves. Like literally, I'm a spoiler, whatever. It's not a spoiler that I think anyone would be concerned with. They're like, one of the Transformers pees. And I'm just like, can we stop doing this? Like, why? Again, we're going back to that well. I'm just like, stop it. You were doing so good. There are some new elements added to this movie. The biggest one is the Maximals, chat, right? The Maximals, and I guess in this case, the Terracons, not the Predacons, the Terracons. The Terracons, they've changed some things around, I suppose. Now the Terracons are servants of Unicron, who is, he's one of the threats in this movie. He's not real. And that's the other big thing, chat, The new character introduced, like the Maximals, which, Ron Perlman voices, Maximus Primal. Michelle Yeoh voices one of the other Maximals. I couldn't tell you who the other ones voice because they are barely in the film. And they are given very little to do except give exposition at key moments. Like the movie opens up with, actually it's like, okay, it's solid opening. Unicron, Nomenon, Vorin, num-numming on a world, chat, and the Maximals got to get the hell out of there, prevent him from getting this key, which will allow him to teleport across the universe and Num Num and Vor other planets, right? I was like, oh, okay, sure. So we're just spending like a lot of time with the Maximals, and we don't see the Maximals again, like as a group, until like maybe an hour later. Like we really spend a lot of time with Michelle Yeoh's character, but for the most part, we don't spend a lot of time with them, and they don't. None of their personalities. Like, I mean, the one thing I do appreciate about them, at least they're not stereotypical and annoying and lame, like a lot of the Autobot characters are, sadly, in this movie. Well, some of them. I shouldn't say all of them, but some of them certainly are. But I was just like, this is called The Rise of the Beast. Like, this is the Transformers movie that I thought from the marketing was going to be focused on these new characters, and it's just not. And I'm just like, why? Why? But you're marketing it that it's going to be all about them, and the movie's just not. Most of the time you are spending with the Autobots. Mostly this character called Mirage, who is voiced by Pete Davidson. And listen, Pete Davidson gets a lot of hate. And I've seen him in a lot of great stuff, before. He did like a really good indie movie years ago that I thought was really cool. The King of Staten Island. Really, really liked that. It was kind of like based off his own life. I thought that was pretty good. He's been in some other stuff too. I think he's a talented guy. And I don't blame him for this role as Mirage, but like his whole thing that he does is just reference things that are in the 90s. Like, it's so funny because when you watch the trailers, nothing about it like indicates that it's in the 90s. It's like, this could be now. And most of the movie, it feels like this is current day. But you are reminded that this is the 90s because they won't stop fucking referencing it, chat. Like everything. I'm just like, can we not always indulge in that, please? I mean, there's literally a joke. There's literally a cringe joke where, at this point, Anthony Ramos's character, you've seen him pop up in a lot of things in the Heights, Hamilton, most recently, I would say. He's like, this is unbelievable. And like at one point, Mirage says, unbelievable? What's unbelievable is that Marky Mark is leaving the Funky Bunch. Huh? He's pursuing acting. I don't think that's going to work out very well. It's like, It's like, stop it. Shut up. Shut up, please. It's like, that's what they do. I'm just like, I can't handle it. And again, this is the dialogue that Pete Davidson is giving, so I don't blame him. I was like, there must be, listen, all right, Mirage is not working for me, really. But there's other Autobots, right? And yeah, there are. Optimus Prime, and this is weird, and I guess this is, again, it feels like a carryover from the Michael Bay movies. I don't know why they make Optimus Prime a dick in these live-action films, or at least the latter ones, It's like, he is, like, super aggressive, and they explain it like, well, he feels guilty, because the Autobots have been stuck on Earth and they can't go back to Cybertron to stop, the Decepticons and Megatron from taking over. But he's just like really, really aggressive. And like he's like, like they fight the villain in the movie, which is Scourge, which is voiced by Peter Dinklage, and very uninspired kind of performance. Again, not his fault. He's just like he's like, I'm a bad guy. I collect other Transformers body parts. It's kind of my thing. And there's just this one part where Optimus, like they're fighting. And Scourge is like, I will stop you, Optimus. Optimus Prime is like, I'm going to fucking cut your head off. And it's like, whoa. It's like, what are you doing? It's so weird. And like, I'm not against, Optimus Prime. Like the Rooster Teeth series, I thought was really interesting because it was like a prequel show before the Transformers as we know them. And this is before like Optimus Prime was even a leader, and he was unsure of himself, and he was just like, I don't know what the right decision is, which was interesting. Here he's just being a dick. And I just found it like really unappealing. Like it's not until the end it's like, and he hates humans for some reason. He's like, I don't trust the humans. They suck. I don't like them. And like Bumblebee, who's, oh my God, we'll get to Bumblebee in a second. It's like, well, I had a great time with a human girl, and he's like, she sucked too. It's like, whoa, what is? It's so weird. Bumblebee, on the other hand, which I really just hate the thing that he doesn't have a voice anymore, and like he just uses the radio to talk. Except in this movie, he is just referencing films. And so when he speaks, it's just catchphrases, it's iconic lines. I mean, pick an iconic line out of a hat, chat. From 90s movies or movies from the 80s. He probably says it in this film. I'm like, you instantly recognize it. I'm just like, this is not really working. And I'm not a big fan. Honestly, the only character of the Autobots, because there's another character voiced by John DiMaggio. I was like, John DiMaggio. I recognize him because he's using his Scottish accent from Samurai Jack the Scotsman. And he's like this giant plane that carries them. All he does is like, I don't fight. I just carry you from place to place. All right, that's all I do. All right, I'm a dropship. I do not battle anybody, right? And I think he has like maybe a couple lines of dialogue. The only character that I like from the Autobots, honestly, is RC, because she wasn't mean, she wasn't stereotypical or referencing things, and she wasn't annoying. And she was just like, I'm just here to do my job and try to do the best job possible. And she has like, I think some of the best camaraderie in scenes of like the human characters and other characters. Like I actually really liked RC. It's like, just have him be like her, please. Thank you. I would appreciate that. But man, I just really disliked how they handled a lot of the Autobots in this movie. It's just weird choices all around, either indulging in some of the things in the past, the Michael Bay movies, right? Or just doing the laziest types of adaptations where it's like, let's take this beloved childhood property, but instead of honoring where it came from in the past and referencing things where it makes sense to the plot, let's just reference 90s culture. It's cool. I was like, shut up. The bad guys, as I said, they're just bad guys. Scourge, voiced by Peter Dinklage, he's like a trophy hunter, and he works for Unicron. He's like, Unicron gives me energy to become the best Transformer that I can be so I can hunt more people. Unicron is voiced by, I didn't know who voiced him at first. Like, who's voicing him? Because you can't tell. I mean, to be fair, you couldn't tell that Unicron was voiced by Orson Welles in the original animated movie either, because the voice is so modified. Coleman Domingo voices, who's a great actor, has a great voice. Candyman. You just want to hear that guy narrate things, right? It's like, oh, well, that'd be a great choice for Unicron. He voices you couldn't even tell. You can't even tell it's Coleman Domingo. It's just like, I want to eat the planet. That's everything. And it's just so weird. That's like, okay, you get a great actor, great voice actor, and be like, oh yeah, have him voice a Transformer. That makes sense. But you give him to the character you give him is the guy whose voice is the most. It's not distinct at all. It can literally, I could voice him. You could voice him. Anyone could voice Unicron. It would sound the same because they make so many changes to the voice, in post-production. They modify it so much, like anyone can do it. So it was very weird. I know I didn't like that. And then you have the human element, and although they're not as talented as Shia LaBeouf. No, I'm joking. So you have the human element, which is you have the two human lead duo, Anthony Ramos and Dominique Fishback. Anthony Ramos, like I said, most recently in Into the Heights and Hamilton, a lot of musical stuff, very talented actor. Dominique Fishback, who's recently coming off of Donald Glover's Swarm, where even though I didn't like how that series wrapped up, her performance was absolutely fantastic. She did a great job. They're not really given much to do either, they're just kind of there, and I know, listen, I know that there's always been a human element in Transformers, mostly because they probably like the idea of like a little kid hanging out with the Transformers. So, because the kid, if they buy the toys, it's like they're hanging out with the Transformers. Like, that's the whole mindset like Hasbro instilled in people in the 80s. And that's kind of carried over. Like, okay, I guess you can have that, even though I feel like, you can do a Transformers movie and not have any human characters. I mean, they kind of almost do that with the 86 film. It's like, yes, I know Spike's in there briefly. I know Daniel has a role, but they're not really important, aside from a couple of moments. And but at the same time, like Haley Steinfeld's character in Bumblebee, I liked her story. I liked her camaraderie with Bumblebee, the human element worked with her. But here, it really doesn't. It's Anthony Ramos' character, I think his name is Noah. He's like a soldier, an ex-soldier, and he's trying to get a job in security. But the man won't let him get that job, because despite being, even though they tell you like throughout the film like he's a soldier, I honestly have to say, like, I never really got that vibe from him that he was a soldier. It just it didn't come across in his performance. I'm like, this guy's a soldier? Are you sure? Okay, if you say so. And Dominique Fishback, she's this archaeologist, and she is not able to get a higher position in her profession because the woman is keeping her down. So they basically team up with the Transformers, and they are in search of the MacGuffin of the movie, and they mostly just run away from things. That's really what they do, and they try to get the MacGuffin. Outside, they're not bad. They're not bad in the movie. It's just, the material they're giving isn't compelling. It's not interesting. It doesn't really make them really interesting. There's not really like an earnest, wholesome moment between them that I felt like, oh, I want to see these two reunite. I mean, if they don't come back for the next one, I'd be like, well, okay. I mean, that's fine with me. But for this one, it just, the human element I didn't think didn't work. I mean, thankfully, they are not like, shot gratuitously like, Michael Bay would shoot, his actors, certainly his female actors, chat. There's nothing like that, but, there's nothing about them that really stood out to me that I found interesting or very compelling. No Shia LaBeouf, mind you, but, they're better than Shia LaBeouf. And, I feel like just a lot of, it reminded me, because once the end credits popped up and everything, and I looked at the director, because I keep forgetting who directed this movie. It's not Michael Bay, but it's Stephen Caple Jr. And his last big movie that he did, I know he might have done another thing before this particular movie, but he did Creed 2. And Creed 2, I think like all of us were, and some people I know really enjoy that movie, but, I was a huge fan of Creed. I thought, oh, what a great way to kind of, bring back the Rocky franchise, but from a different perspective. And I was like, I'm a big Rocky fan, and Rocky Balboa was also just a great ending, too, for that character. But, hey, continue on like this way. I thought that was great. Creed was a really good movie. And so I was excited for Creed 2, but I was disappointed that they weren't bringing back, obviously the original director, and they brought in this guy. I was like, okay. And I was like, oh, well, the cool concept is we're going to bring in Drago. It's like, oh, all these interesting elements. But it's funny, like the same issues that I kind of have with Rise of the Beast is the same issues I have with Creed 2. It's like, I don't feel like Stephen Caple Jr. capitalizes on like the what I think a lot of people perceive as like, oh, the main gimmick of the movie, where it's like it's the return of Drago. We're finally getting into the Dragos, like in Creed 2, and they really don't. It really just like, it's a thing, and then we kind of focus on these other, plot lines that have little to do with the main story. Like, there was such a big focus, like in Creed 2, on is the child of Adonis Creed gonna be deaf? And I was like, okay, I mean, I don't really care, and that was like such a big focus of that movie. It's like, I don't give a shit. And it's like, shouldn't we instead like be focusing on, the Drago and the Creed relationship and just the really bad history between their families, but also at the same time, like really give even more, give depth finally to Ivan Drago and his son. I think that would have been perfect, and they don't. And it's just like, here, it's like, it's the same issue, except It's with the Maximals. And it's like, let's give them like the focus, and they're not. They're just not focused on. It's like, what the fuck are we doing? You know, we just feel like we're kind of repeating the same things that Michael Bay has done, although not nearly as gratuitous and sexist and racist as he has done. But it just seems to be indulging in a lot of the bad aspects of those films. And yeah, it's disappointing, especially after Bumblebee. And also the action, chat. I don't know, like, I found a lot of the action to be kind of uninspired and dull. There were moments in my theater. My theater was going off like towards the end of the film. There's a character that is out of the movie for a while, and they come back and they have this big action scene. I think it was undone because the film felt the fucking need to include as many rap and hip hop songs as they possibly could. And I thought it kind of took away from the moment. It's like, and that's the other thing too. Why don't these filmmakers take the score from the original cartoon in like the 86 movie? Because that's the thing, like during my review, which I did it yesterday, check it out. I really actually enjoyed talking about that film. Like the music in that and the soundtrack in that's pretty good. Like it really stands out to the same. I mean, of course, you know, you got the touch, you got the power, which sounds ridiculous, but it's like, wow, it works. A lot of the music here, I think, does not work. But the other thing is, that movie still has like a really great score, and it's like, why don't you just do a more bombastic, operatic version of that for the live action? And they just do not. I'm like, why? That'd be like the easiest thing to do. It would be already like, you'll get nostalgic feelings from that, sure, for the fans, but it also would fit the scenes because that's what people are used to seeing. But no, we got to put in a 90s hip hop song. It's like, stop doing that. All right, I'm fucking sick of it. So yeah, it's not as terrible as the Michael Bay movie. Certainly not the second onward. But, yeah, it's disappointing. And, you know, it comes down to, chat, you know, where Bumblebee and I think Travis Knight took some great steps forward. Like, truly, now more than ever. Some great steps forward for live-action Transformers films. Stephen Caple Jr., he takes just many steps back and entrenches this film franchise, I think, yet again, in mediocrity. And it's disappointing. And listen, there is a, I don't know if there's a stinger at the end of the movie, but there is a scene at the end of the movie where they set something up, and the audience was like, oh yeah, that's going to be cool. I'm like, why? Because what they are referencing is like that's been adapted so well in the past. Like I'm like, I'm not excited for this. You know, this has, again, I want to say what it is, but Hasbro wants to get into, you know, building like a big film franchise, you know, on top of a film franchise. I'm like, you got a lot of work to do. You know, I think you maybe were in a better place after Bumblebee. Funny enough, apparently Stephen Caple Jr. was offered Bumblebee 2. That's what the studio wanted him to do. Paramount wanted him to do. But he refused and said, nah, I want to do something with the Maximals, which is so weird because he doesn't seem to care about them. And he made this movie instead. But yeah, it's disappointing, Chad, especially after Bumblebee, which was really entertaining. I think I like Bumblebee more even now after watching this movie. It's like, you know, I want to give that movie even more respect. But yeah, Chad, I'm sorry. I found this movie very disappointing, very dull. You know, it has a few cool moments, but other than that, I just like, yeah, this is not looking good. So for me, I don't know. I give it like it's not quite a, you know, on the double toasted scale. It's not some old bullshit. It's not that, but it's a rental. It's just a rental for me. You know, I don't need to see this one again. Whereas like I would happily watch Moby again. I happily watch the original 86 Transformers film again. But hell, I might even watch the 2007 Transformers film over this one. But yeah, I just personally found it pretty disappointing. But that's my opinion, chat. I know a lot of people are enjoying this movie. You know, they did get a lot out of it, but for myself, I personally didn't. But how do you guys feel about Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, and where do you think the franchise is going to go forward, you know, from here, especially after that last scene? Let me know. I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and I want to take the time to tell you about my Patreon, Class in the Glass, which offers hundreds of film commentaries and video reactions to numerous movies, TV shows, and cartoons. If you're a fan of shows like Batman the Animated Series and Avatar: The Last Airbender, or films like Aliens and Raiders of the Lost Ark, my Patreon is the platform for you. Currently, I'm doing a subathon to reach 75 subs on the platform. If we hit 75 subs, we'll be able to start voting on the next edited YouTube reaction, which will include actual clips and scenes from the movies and shows I comment over. Choose from such films as Fire and Ice, Masters of the Universe, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or Spawn. Subscribing at any tier level is appreciated, and feel free to give feedback at any time. Thank you again for watching the video, and see you next time.